You've already created a beautiful marketing plan. If you haven't, go back to our previous video of how to create a marketing plan, then come back to this one. Now, how are you going to stick with it? A little bit of extra work now will make it easier to stick with your plan a few months down the road. Recognize where you are now and where you want to be. It might take some time to build out an entire year's plan. If this is your first time doing a marketing plan, start with planning out a quarter or 6 months and don't try to tackle the entire year. Build slack into the schedule and be realistic about vacations, holidays, and so forth. We tend to want to build plans that exist for an ideal world, and the world is never going to be ideal. Recognize this up front and give yourself room in the timeline to pivot so you aren't a stress bucket 2 months from now trying to stick to an overly aggressive timeline. Speaking of, you probably have projects that aren't yet on an ideal timeline for your marketing plan. Don't try to change everything at once. Build in incremental changes over time. If your ads tend to get done at the last minute, or if your magazine is slipping later and later, don't try to fix it all at once. It takes time to get things on a good cadence, and especially if this is your first time tackling a marketing plan, it could take a year or two to back out the timelines to their ideal cadence. Pick the things that will reduce the most stress if you fix them now. Go from there. Rome wasn't built in a day, and your timelines aren't all going to magically change overnight. And that's okay. Again, don't try for perfect on everything all at once. And speaking of not trying for perfection on day one, you're going to need to get buy-in from everyone involved. If this is the first time sticking to a new format or timeline, it pays to meet with people who will be the most impacted by this ahead of time and pitch them on what you want to do and see if they have any ideas on how to optimize it. Maybe they see an area in the schedule you need to change because you hadn't accounted for a membership drive happening at the same time. No one person can see every eventuality. Running the plan past your team will allow you to catch potential problems before they become issues, and it gets everyone on the same page. If everyone, down to the intern, knows why the timing of the membership drive is important and why they need to hit their deadlines, that's a lot more meaningful to them than just throwing deadlines out. Show the reasoning behind the plan and give everyone the vision of that bigger picture, whether that's increasing your membership numbers, getting your members to be more engaged, or whatever those big picture goals are. Proactively look for places where the schedule gets too bunched up. We all have busy seasons, and you probably know when yours will hit. Make things easier on yourself and your staff where you can. If you're scrambling with your year-end budgeting, try not to host a huge event at the same time. Take a hard look at your people resources and think about how you can leverage your time and your staff time to the best advantage of your members. Maybe that means cutting back on something. That's okay too. Recognize where everyone's time is going and be intentional about what you're doing with that time. I touched on this before, but I can't stress this enough. Build in slack to catch up. Keep a certain percentage for ad hoc. This is doubly important if you're doing a plan for the first time. There will be things that come up, and you won't account for every eventuality. Set you and your team up for success by making those random last-minute things part of the schedule. It might realistically be 30 to 40% of your schedule that goes into the ad hoc projects the first year, and that's okay. It's just important to acknowledge that they will come up and make enough room for them. And then document the ad hoc projects so that you can better account for them in the next plan. You'll probably have a better idea of what season you're most likely to have ad hoc needs come up then as well, and better predict that. Lastly, review what worked and what didn't on a regular basis. The plan is there to serve you, and it isn't set in stone, but it's only good if it's a living document and not something you dig out every 6 months. You and your team should be using the plan as a blueprint, and it should be integrated into your regular workflow. Maybe it gets translated from a Word document into your project management system. Maybe you go over it in your team meeting once a week. There are lots of ways you can reference it, but the important thing is to always keep line of sight to it. If you want to get away from doing everything at the last second, you absolutely must keep it in front of everyone and reference it constantly. In my experience, once a month just doesn't cut it. Figure out how to build it into the regular workflow of the association and keep it top of mind for everyone. Set yourself up for success this year. You can get away from that last-minute rat race, and you can get your marketing and communications team to a place where everything is mostly planned out well ahead of time. Take your work life back. You can do this, and it will feel so good once you get there.